Last night was supposed to be another regular season WNBA game, just another stop on Indiana's schedule, another chance for the Fever to keep building momentum. But by the time the final buzzer sounded, the entire conversation around the league had changed. Because what happened on that court wasn't just a win, it wasn't just a hot shooting night, and it definitely wasn't just another Caitlin Clark performance. It became a night where records started falling one after another, where frustration turned into domination, and where Sophie Cunningham reminded everybody exactly why this Indiana team becomes so dangerous when all of its pieces are healthy. But before the records, before the celebrations, and before Indiana put together one of the most explosive offensive performances in franchise history, there was controversy, and there was plenty of it. From the opening minutes, Toronto made it clear they weren't interested in getting into a track meet with Indiana. They knew exactly what happens when the Fever get comfortable. They knew exactly what happens when Caitlin Clark starts pushing pace and finding shooters in transition. So instead, Toronto tried something different. They turned the game physical. Every possession felt like a battle. Every drive looked contested. Every loose ball became a wrestling match. And almost immediately, fans started noticing something unusual. The whistles weren't exactly making everybody happy. Social media lit up as viewers questioned several calls throughout the first half. Every time Indiana seemed ready to build momentum, another whistle stopped the action. Every time the Fever looked ready to create separation, the game slowed back down, and that only added fuel to the frustration. The biggest source of tension quickly became Marina Mabre. Now, Mabre has never been known as a player who backs down from physical basketball. That's part of what makes her effective. She plays with an edge. She competes hard. She embraces confrontation. But throughout this game, she found herself right in the middle of several moments that had Fever fans furious. There were collisions. There were screens. There was plenty of contact. And every single sequence seemed to create another debate online. One play involving Caitlin Clark immediately got attention when fans believed excessive contact had gone uncalled. Another sequence involving Lexi Hull sparked even more reactions. Then another, and then another. Suddenly, people weren't just talking about basketball anymore. They were talking about officiating. They were talking about consistency. And they were wondering how much physicality officials were actually willing to allow. The tension kept building. The crowd felt it. The players felt it. And the game started developing a completely different energy than anyone expected before tip-off. But while everyone was focused on the controversy, something important was happening underneath the surface. Indiana wasn't falling apart. They weren't losing composure. They weren't allowing frustration to take over. Instead, they were staying connected. And that decision changed everything. One of the biggest reasons was Raven Johnson. Her impact isn't always reflected by a huge scoring number. She isn't always the player making highlight reels, but championship-level teams need players exactly like her. Every loose ball, every defensive rotation, every hustle play. Johnson seemed to be everywhere. When the pace slowed down, she brought energy. When the momentum shifted, she answered. When Toronto tried to make things uncomfortable, she responded with effort instead of emotion, and right alongside her was Lexi Hull. Despite being involved in several of the game's most talked-about physical moments, Hull refused to let herself get distracted. Instead of arguing, instead of losing focus, she kept playing, possession after possession, minute after minute. Indiana stayed composed, and that composure became one of the biggest turning points of the entire night, because eventually all that frustration had to go somewhere, and it ended up fueling a player who was about to completely change the game. Sophie Cunningham. For most of the season, Cunningham has quietly been one of Indiana's most important players. She brings toughness, she brings energy, she brings confidence, and maybe most importantly, she brings shooting. But recently, she'd been dealing with an issue that many fans didn't fully realize. Her elbow had been bothering her, not enough to keep her off the court, but enough to affect rhythm, enough to affect consistency, enough to make life difficult for any shooter. The scary part? That problem was finally starting to disappear, and Toronto happened to be the team that discovered exactly what that meant. At first, it looked like a normal shooting performance. One three-pointer, then another. Nothing to see.